Hello everybody, Danny Diamond here. You're in the Diamond Mine. Cheers. Nice Bloody Mary to kick off our Listomania of my top 10 favorite progressive rock bands, or prog rock. Now, I know I say this a good bit, but this is not the definitive list. These are just my favorite of bands within this style. I'm going to cheat a bit here and there, but I'm also going to try and keep things moving. I am going to start with a few honorable mentions. Now, this is a band that is going to rank very, very high top a list I'm planning on newer rock bands. More on that later, but I definitely want to mention Why Not. Now, this is their debut album. They've put out two. They put this one out almost exactly 2 years ago. Really, really fine record. I enjoy both of the albums. They sort of started as a Rush tribute, and I think many of you know that I've been playing in Rush tributes for a long time. But they were a little unique in that they were a four-piece. They had guitar, bass, drums, and then an excellent female singer. And they have since branched out into doing original music, and it's just fantastic. So if you haven't checked out Why Not, YYNOT, do yourself a favor and give them a listen. Okay? All right, some other honorable mentions involve someone who will get mentioned later on in the list. This is Flying Colors, sort of a prog rock supergroup. Yet another prog rock supergroup, Transatlantic. And they all involve this man here. This is his solo album, Testimony. Neil Morse, who is best known for being one of the founders and originally the lead songwriter, the main songwriter for Spock's Beard. So more on Spock's Beard later. Now officially starting the list at number 10, a band that actually influenced Spock's Beard a good bit, Gentle Giant. And what I'm doing here when I show these album covers, I'm showing the cover that actually introduced me to that band. So these aren't necessarily the first album from that band or even my favorite from that band, but the album that introduced me to them. So this is The Power and the Glory. I got into Gentle Giant. I want to say I'd heard whisperings of them. It was probably sometime around college or maybe a little thereafter. Now this, at number 9, I'm going to go with, now these white album covers do not show up very well at all. In fact, you can see the album cover better right behind me. There it is. See it on the wall? That's Worlds Apart. So Saga, the Canadian rock band. I got into them around 1982 when I joined the Columbia Record and Tape Club. My initial shipment contained a cassette with that album. Fantastic group. Shades of new wave in there along with the prog rock. But okay, moving on. A little bit of a cheat here because it's a tie for number 8 for me. This is Tarkus by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Fantastic record. I probably started listening to this around the mid-90s when I got into Spock's Beard and they were talking about some of their big influences, and Neil Morse was talking about this album in particular. So I bought this used, I think, from Ed McKay's or somewhere quite some time ago, and it's a fantastic record. And they're a band that they've got quite a catalog, and it's something that I look forward to continuing to explore. You can always find out new things about music. Here's another band with a huge catalog that, you know, I only know bits and pieces of, but I like them quite a bit. This is the album that I'm really familiar with, King Crimson, Discipline. I've got to give a shout out to the other guitar player in my first band. We were co-lead guitar players in a 4-piece band. His name was John Kessler, and he had this record, played it a lot, and he turned me on to it. Just fantastic, fantastic music. intellectual, but still with a lot of soul. So King Crimson and ELP tie at number 8. Number 7 for me, gosh, I got into this album when it came out in the early 80s. Marillion and the Misplaced Childhood album. Just fantastic record here. Kaylee was the hit single, but the entire thing is just masterful. They this was their 3rd album overall, and then not too long after this album, Fish, their original lead singer, left the band, and they replaced him and have continued to put out great music. Another band that I just intend on exploring more as I go forward, but like them enough that I'm sorry, I got a message while I'm trying to tape this. Okay, moving on here. Now, this album is not exactly what I would call prog rock, but I would certainly call a huge part of the earlier catalog was certainly prog rock. So this was the album that introduced me to the band Styx. Still one of my favorites to this day. It has been eclipsed by something that I would call more of a prog rock album, The Grand Illusion. I'll do a full ranking on them soon, but this came out in 1981. I got it on vinyl that year, fell in love with it, and then kind of went backwards and explored the band. And certainly all the Wooden Nickel stuff and everything. I think Pieces of 8 was the last thing that I would call having a lot going on in the prog department up until they recently put out a concept album that is very proggy and was excellent. 2017's The Mission. Anyway, Styx has got to make the list here. Next on the list, another American prog band, Kansas. And I got into this when it came out in the late 70s. Dust in the Wind is off of this album. That was inescapable. I also loved the title track, Point of No Return. I've seen Kansas at least 3 times, including one time in a small club where I was not quite front row, but damn close to the stage, and they just blew me away. They're fantastic live. They've had many different kind of lineups, but I think that this is sort of the classic lineup here, the Left Overture and Point of No Return era lineup of the band, with Steve Walsh at the helm on lead vocals. But moving on. Now again, another album that's not particularly proggy, but the one that got me into the band in 1983, the self-titled album from Genesis. But all of the Peter Gabriel era stuff before Phil Collins came forward on lead vocals, and he'd always been the drummer in the band. But several of the albums after Peter Gabriel left were still very kind of in the prog rock vein, and then they went into more of a sort of just a pop direction. But this still remains one of my favorite of their records, and they are just a great prog rock band. They're really, in my mind, great at everything they try their hand at. Maybe a few exceptions, but again, you can expect album rankings on just about any of these bands at some point. Okay, so next up at number 3, and I'm wearing a T-shirt, which you can probably see a lot better than. Again, these white album covers just really don't come through very well the way I'm doing this, but here we go. Okay, Pink Floyd, The Wall, came out in late 79. I think I was aware of it pretty immediately because of another Brick in the Walls, fame, and we were all little kids on the school bus singing along to the We Don't Need No Education. Our school bus driver would play that. She played that album, and then she'd play Street Songs by Rick James all the time. It's quite a mix. Pink Floyd, obviously, just a fantastic, fantastic band. I actually just maybe an hour ago taped my version of the Guitar Solo to Time, so please check that out if you feel like it. Number 2 for me, all-time favorite prog rock band. I just love these guys. I wish that more people knew about them. They're one of those bands like King's X and Galactic Cowboys and a number of other bands I can think of where I just don't really understand why they're not just huge. But they do have I think they're sort of the torchbearers for prog rock today and have been for a long time now. But this is the album that got me into them. It was the mid to late 90s that I discovered them. This is their fourth album, Day for Night. Not my very favorite record from the band, but way up there. Fantastic, fantastic record. Spock's Beard sort of sounds like a mixture of early Genesis and the proggy version of Yes, mixed with the songwriting and harmonies of the Beatles. Just a wonderful, wonderful band. Spock's Beard, check them out. And then coming in at number one, you may hear this in the background. Thank you, Rich Wagner, for suggesting that I listen to some Yes songs again. That's what's playing in the background. But here's the album that introduced me to Yes in the early 80s, 90125. Expect a ranking soon, thanks to those who voted on the little Facebook poll that I did this week. But I've got to put Yes at number one for my favorite prog bands, and I've seen them live twice. Once with the Trevor Rabin era band on the Big Generator tour, and then again with the Steve Howe-centered lineup on I think they called it the Masterworks tour and Kansas Open. So what a show that was. Right, Todd Ayers? Okay, well, we've gone through this list but in pretty good time. I'm at about 12 minutes here. Please feel free to share your lists. A lot of this really is just so that we can all talk about this music that we love, okay? It's not about me, saying that my opinion is the be-all, end-all. So really we're just trying to have fun here. I want to thank you all for watching. Please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And until you see me again, please be well, enjoy life, and come back to the mine soon and often. Cheers.